Ever wonder how companies get away with those flashy ads? The ones that make these big promises, like this thing is going to change your life. It's like, come on, really?
Right.
So today we're doing a deep dive on advertising, but with a twist. We're going to see how those attention-grabbing claims, what experts call cheap talk, actually work hand in hand with those super detailed product reviews you find online.
Yeah, and what's so interesting here is that those two things, the hype, right, and then the cold, hard data, they're not totally separate. They actually affect each other, which I think is really surprising.
For sure. And we found this new paper, and oh boy, get ready for some serious aha moments. First big takeaway. Companies aren't just throwing out those catchy slogans all willy-nilly. They're actually thinking about those tough, independent reviews that'll come out later.
It's like, imagine a company's launching a new phone, right?
Yeah.
They might not know for sure how the battery's going to hold up after months of use, or if that camera software is really as amazing as they're claiming. But they still want to build excitement right now.
So it's marketing blitz time. This phone's going to revolutionize how you take pictures. The battery, it lasts for days. We've all seen those ads.
Exactly. Cheap talk at its finest.
But, and this is key, the company knows that eventually you're going to start seeing those in-depth reviews pop up on sites like specific product review website mentioned by the listener. And those reviewers, they don't mess around.
Oh, they will absolutely put that phone through the ringer.
Yeah.
They'll test the battery life with different apps, compare the camera quality in like every lighting situation imaginable. They leave no stone unturned.
And that's where this truth-telling incentive comes into play. This paper found that knowing a tough review is on the horizon actually makes companies more careful about what they're promising early on.
So it's like they're trying to squeeze in as much hype as possible before the truth comes out.
I wouldn't necessarily say get away with, but yeah, they know it's coming. The possibility of those credible, detailed reviews, it kind of keeps their advertising in check, encourages them to stay at least somewhat grounded in reality, even when they're hyping things up. Okay, so that makes sense. But what's really wild is how the amount of detail in those reviews changes things. The paper found that if product reviews are super detailed and accurate, companies might not even bother with that informative cheap talk in the first place.
Yeah.
Wait, really? That seems kind of counterintuitive. Why wouldn't companies want to give even more info to compete with all those details?
Well, think about it, to give you truly useful details early on. To go beyond just like vague hype, that takes work. They've got to do research, get feedback from actual users, figure out what you really care about, and then communicate all that effectively. It eats up time and money.
So if those super detailed reviews are already out there, companies might be thinking, why bother? The reviews will do the talking for them.
Exactly. But here's the catch. It means you might be missing out on some genuinely useful info when the product's still new.
It's a trade-off then. Independent reviews are super valuable, but they might come at the cost of less informative advertising directly from the company.
Exactly. It's a delicate balance, for sure.
Okay, that's a lot to digest. So for those of us listening who aren't like marketing experts, what's the key takeaway? How should we be looking at advertising and reviews now?
Don't write off the cheap talk completely. It can still give you valuable hints, especially when you look at it alongside those in-depth reviews.
So we got to be savvy consumers, right? Look for those clues, the contradictions between the hype and what actually shakes out in the reviews.
Exactly. Ask yourself, is a company's message consistent across their ads? And what shows up later in the reviews? Are there red flags? Are they always over-promising and under-delivering?
This reminds me of that tech company that was boasting about their new smartwatch. They said it could track everything, sleep cycles, moods, you name it. Then the reviews hit, and turns out the heart rate monitor barely even worked.
Oh yeah, classic example. Those kinds of inconsistencies, they tell you a lot about whether a company is really committed to being transparent and honest, even in their advertising.
So basically, be skeptical, but be informed. Take everything with a grain of salt, but recognize that even the cheap talk can hold some clues.
Absolutely. But there's another layer to this whole thing that I think is super interesting.
Ooh, I love a good plot twist. What else did this research uncover?
It's not just about whether the cheap talk matches reality. It's also that when it does match, it can tell you something really interesting about the company itself.
Interesting how, are they treating their employees well or using sustainable practices?
Oh, those things are important for sure. But I'm talking more about their whole approach to quality and being upfront with customers. If what they're saying early on actually holds up when those independent reviewers dig in, it suggests they're really committed to delivering on what they promise. It goes deeper than just like avoiding bad press.
Okay, so it's like they're building a reputation for honesty, even in advertising, which can be, well, let's just say creative sometimes. Honestly, if a company has shown they can walk the walk, I'm way more likely to trust them next time they release something new.
Exactly. Now, this whole dynamic, the truth-telling thing and the impact of those reviews, it actually plays out differently depending on how much info the company has before launching those big ad campaigns.
Gotcha. So we're talking about info on the product itself, right?
Right, but it's more about the kind of info. Some companies go all out, tons of testing, focus groups, the whole 9 yards. They have a pretty good idea of what's going to click with people and what the product's weak points might be.
So they've got a game plan. They know what to emphasize and what to maybe downplay a little.
Yes, and they can craft their cheap talk to be persuasive, but still pretty accurate, because they're confident it'll line up with what those reviews are going to say down the line.
Yeah.
But not every company has that luxury.
Yeah, some might be working with tech that's brand new, or maybe they're jumping into a whole new market. I imagine their info might be a little more hopeful than factual, maybe?
Let's just say there's a bit more uncertainty in the mix. The paper suggests that those companies, they're actually more sensitive to those independent reviews that are coming. Makes sense, right? Their cheap talk is a bigger gamble because their own info might be a little shaky.
So the companies with that proven track record, the ones known for quality, they can be a bit bolder. But for companies with a past that's, well, maybe a little rockier, maybe some products that didn't quite live up to the hype, there's definitely more pressure to get it right.
Absolutely. And that's where the whole cheap talk and reviews thing gets really interesting. It creates this whole feedback loop. A company's past performance influences how people see their advertising, which affects whether people actually buy the thing, which then feeds back into the company's rep for future releases.
Okay, yeah, I'm seeing how this all connects. It's like this ongoing conversation between the companies and us, the consumers, and those reviews are kind of like the referee, making sure everyone's playing fair. But this research didn't just look at the companies as a whole, did it? There was something in there about how the type of company changes things too, right?
You're right. They actually differentiate between companies with a known track record of high-quality products versus those with, shall we say, a more inconsistent history. Think of it like this.
So we're talking like, on one hand, you've got, say, that high-end audio company. Everyone knows them. They've got that rep for incredible sound. And then on the other hand, you've got a brand that's, well, maybe they've had some quality control issues in the past, right?
Exactly. Those companies with that solid track record, they can kind of use that history to their advantage in their cheap talk. They can be a little bolder with their claims because people are already primed to believe them just based on what they've seen before. It's like they've built up this reservoir of trust.
It's that halo effect, right? Their rep for quality makes their advertising more believable, even if the details are kind of vague.
Precisely. But then you've got those companies with a shakier past. Maybe they've disappointed consumers before. Their cheap talk, it's going to be met with a lot more skepticism, naturally.
People are going to be looking for proof in those reviews, like, okay, but is this one going to be any different? But here's what I'm wondering. If those companies, the ones without that super solid track record, if they know they're starting off with a bit of a disadvantage, wouldn't they be even more motivated to make their advertising really detailed, super accurate, go above and beyond?
That's such a good point, and it actually leads to another really interesting thing they found in this paper. Sometimes the companies that benefited most from really digging into the details and crafting their cheap talk were the ones less likely to have a talk to your product.
Oh, wow, really? That's so counterintuitive. Why wouldn't companies with a great track record be the most gung-ho about making sure their ads are accurate?
Well, think of it this way. The companies that are already known for quality, they don't have as much to prove. Their brand name and their past performance, that already carries a lot of weight.
They're starting from a position of strength, right? They've already earned that trust.
Exactly. But for companies that are maybe a little less sure of their product or they're trying to move past some missteps, those independent reviews, those are huge for them. A bad review could really hurt.
Because a negative review just kind of confirms what people might already be thinking, unfortunately.
Exactly. So they've got a much stronger reason to get out ahead of those reviews. They want to give you all the details up front, try to address any concerns before they even come up. Basically, they're working hard to build that trust from the very beginning.
So if you see a company, maybe one that's newer or hasn't always had the best track record, if they're the ones coming out strong with super detailed claims about their product, it might actually be a good sign. It could mean they're really serious about being transparent and backing up all that hype.
Absolutely. It just goes to show how important context is. When you're looking at advertising, you can't just take it at face value. You've got to factor in the company's history, their reputation, what they've got to gain or lose.
It's like we all have to be advertising detectives, carefully weighing the evidence before we come to a conclusion. This has been seriously eye-opening. Any final thoughts to leave us with?
This research focused on products, but honestly, I think these ideas apply to so many other areas of life. Think about how we decide who to trust. Whether it's politicians, experts, even news sources, we are bombarded with cheap talk all the time, and it's up to us to figure out what's real, what's spin, and who to believe.
That's a powerful thought to end on. Big thanks to our expert for breaking all this down with us. I don't know about you all, but I'm definitely going to be looking at advertising and just info in general in a whole new way. This is The Deep Dive. Signing off.